This video is about your Microsoft Teams phone or your Microsoft Teams Rooms projects and how to get started. You see, Microsoft relies on its ecosystem of partners when it comes to these full-scale projects. These partners could be device manufacturers of headsets or phones or Microsoft Teams Rooms, or they could be telco partners offering PSTN services in parts of the world that Microsoft doesn't have calling plans. Or they could be system integrators that are helping you with the design and architecture of these solutions, and even day two support and managed services. They could be contact center partners, attendant consult partners. There are a number of different partners. And so it's really important to understand the scope of these projects before you even purchase all that equipment that you saw on the table. It's really important to understand all the different bits and pieces. And that's what this video is really about, helping you understand what these projects entail so that when you do move from your current phone or video conferencing solution, you have at least everything that you used to have, if not much more. And by the way, my name is Shervin Shafi, and I'm a principal technical specialist at Microsoft focused on Teams. I work with a lot of customers in California and other parts of the country, and I'm here to share with you my experiences about what I'm hearing from them, also what I'm seeing in the industry. So if you do enjoy this video, make sure to give it a like, as it really does help the channel, and also consider subscribing and checking out some of my other videos that I've done in the past. So let's get started. So we'll be walking through a set of slides that I can really help explain all the project considerations for Teams Phone and Microsoft Teams Room. And as always, if you have any questions, just drop them in the comments and let me know. The first section is focused on Teams Phone, but I do want to mention that although this is focused on Teams Phone, you should definitely follow along for MTR or Microsoft Teams Rooms as well, because there's a lot of similarities in these projects for either or. Now, you might have seen this slide in the past, and I've even talked about it in one or two videos, where it's an overview of everything that encompasses Teams Phone. I really like it, and we're going to be using this to kind of walk through the project considerations. On the left-hand side, we talk about the core call control and infrastructure being Microsoft Teams Phone, our service. We'll get to that in a little bit. We also have PSTN services and phone numbers, all the different plans. We'll talk about that more in detail later on. And then hardware and soft phone calling endpoints. So these are phones, headsets, speaker pucks, even Microsoft Teams rooms. That's all the hardware. And then on the right-hand side, this is actually the section that I want to focus on. This is partners and integrations. I would say that equally, if not more important than everything that we just talked about on the left, this section is super critical. So let's step through it together, all four of these categories. The first section on the left is ISV integrations and API. And if you're like me, I had no idea what ISV stood for, and it stands for Independent Software Vendors. And so what that is are basically a lot of these partners that we work with for categories like contact center, for example. Because Microsoft doesn't have a Teams Phone contact center per se, we have Dynamics 365 customer care and the digital contact center platform. And we also have automated attendant and call queue capabilities inside Teams, but we don't have a full-fledged contact center. So we have a lot of ISVs like Anywhere 365 or Luware, Tenfer, Nice, that basically develop the contact center platforms that are certified. So examples of ISVs. Similarly, from a compliance recording perspective, if you want to record every single call coming into Teams, then you can use companies like Nice or Verint or Redbox or Audio Codes, and they'll provide you with compliance recording. By the way, we do have ad hoc recording inside a Teams phone call. So you can certainly do that, but this is meant more for recording every single call. Moving on to system integrators. Now, system integrators are super critical in the success of your Teams Phone and MTR projects. I really consider them as an overall project manager, but of course they're much more than that. They can help you bring in all the required vendors that you need So they'll help you pick the device manufacturers for your phones and PSTN providers and contact center options. So they are really providing you with consulting services to help you select the right choices. And they're also helping you with the design and architecture of this technology, as well as configuration services. So think of SIs or system integrators as a company that's really supplementing your own IT team. Because if you think about it, your IT team, as smart and sharp as everyone is, might not have deployed Teams Phone or MTRs at the same scale that these system integrators have in the past. So they're really bringing a tremendous amount of expertise to supplement your teams. They can also provide day two services like operational monitoring, making sure that your phone and MTR projects are always online and in tip-top shape. They can also provide and consolidate your support tickets, fielding your tier one and possibly even tier two, and then escalating into Microsoft or the vendors as needed, and also provide things like department billing. So if you're a large international company with a lot of different departments, they can kind of carve out who has to pay for what based on usage and so on. So these are all options that different SIs have, but really what you want to do is interview a number of different system integrators, because some of them are more focused on MTR, some of them on phone, some of them are just general system integrators and don't have as much expertise, right? So really best for you to interview, but certainly SIs are key in the success of your project. Now you might be wondering who some of these system integrators are, names of some of these companies, and I was actually able to find a public site that's a Microsoft Teams Room partner located. I know we're talking about Teams Phone, but this is what I was able to find for you on the public site. So you can see a list of MTR partners, and I've actually worked with a few of them myself recently, like avi-spl, Diversified, Unified Communications, and Yorktel as well. So this is a list, and on the Teams Phone side, I know I'm not sharing that information with you because I couldn't find it, but and if you do find it, by the way, drop it in the comments section. But you can always reach out to people like myself at Microsoft, your technical specialist or your SSP, and ask who the Teams Phone partners are in your geography, because they kind of vary by geography. So these are some examples of SIs for MTR. Now moving on to the third category under partners and integrations, and that is operators. Now I was able to find basically a list of operators under Operator Connect. Now we have different types of operators I'll show you in just a second, but from an Operator Connect perspective, looks like today we have about 40 different carriers, if you will, that are providing PSTN services using the Operator Connect technology. So a lot of great companies, and these are worldwide, right? A lot of these companies are offering 40, 50, 60 different countries that they're providing services in. So great list under Operator Connect. But talking about operators, you know that Microsoft is not just tied to one type of technology, right? So even though I was able to show you Operator Connect, from a PSTN perspective, we have 4 different ways of connecting to PSTN. And the really cool thing about this is that you can mix and match, and you don't have to just use one carrier. You can mix the carriers or the technologies. Really awesome in the terms of flexibility that we have. But we talked about Operator Connect, but there's also direct routing, which is kind of the original bring your PSTN type of technology that we've had. And then there's also, of course, Microsoft's calling plans in 33 countries today and growing. And then we also have this new Microsoft Teams Phone Mobile. I did a video on this recently, so if you want to check out what that is, then take a look at that later on. But 4 different ways of kind of having an operator, if you will, or PSTN services in Microsoft Teams Phone and Microsoft Teams Rooms today. Rounding out the last spot under partners and integration, we have OEMs. And OEMs, when I think of them as manufacturers of hardware, right? The phones and the headsets and the Microsoft Teams Rooms. And you can see there are so many different companies that Microsoft works with, and we certify their hardware so that our software can run on them. And so this is a list of all the different companies down here. From an OEM perspective, I don't know if these fit exactly under OEM, but still, they make hardware or SBCs, which sometimes are really just software, right? They're just running on, they're virtualized now. But all these different companies are also making SBCs, the session border controllers, like for example, Oracle or Audio Codes and Ribbon, and other ones as well. So OEM partners are certainly critical, especially if you're thinking about analog or PBX integration that I'll talk about in just a few minutes. So to summarize everything we've talked about so far, I would say that pretty much everything in yellow we've covered, right? We talked about the different PSTN considerations that you need to have. We talked about partners and integrations on the right-hand side here. And then also we talked about OEMs and devices and endpoints. But what we haven't talked about for your Teams Phone project considerations is the Teams Phone service itself, right? The call control and infrastructure. So let's look at some of the things that you need to be aware of as you embark on this project. But before we do, really important note on partners. I want you to recognize that they don't all fit in a box, right? So even though we talked about these different categories, these 4 categories of partners and integrations, the ISV integrations and APIs, system integrators, operators, OEMs, I would never say that one partner is exclusively just fitting into one of these categories. So I'll give you an example. When I've been working recently with Tata Communications, although initially I think of them as a telco or a PSTN provider, they can also help you configure and deploy your Teams Phone technology. So they kind of bring in that system integrator planning and configuration side of it as well. And so they also have a consulting service. Now, on the other side, when I talk to a company like Yealink, which is an OEM or a device manufacturer, they can do the same thing. They can help you configure and deploy and roll out your Teams Phone. So I would never think that any one of them, even though they're an OEM, they can't do an SI work, or if they're a PSTN or an operator, they can't do an SI work. So they do kind of bleed in into different aspects, and that's why it's critical for you to interview them and understand where their sweet spots are. So just recognize that you can't just fit them into a box. Okay, so like I said, let's look into the Microsoft Teams Room bucket and dive into what that entails. So first, when I think about Microsoft Teams Room, if I was embarking on a project, if I already had an existing phone system, I would look at all the features, right? Understand the features that Microsoft has. And the reason that's important is because you want to make sure that the technology that Microsoft has fits into your existing workflow, your business workflow, right? And then you also want to consider your dial plan. Are you able to create a dial plan that fits your business? And then from a management side, does Microsoft have the management tools on the admin side to be able to make sure that you're operating your environment in an efficient way and in a scalable way, right? So these are some of the things that I would look at under core capabilities. And then on the feature side, you can see this on a public site that we have, our admin site. And this is always kind of subject to change in terms of all the features that we're adding. But these are some of the features that we have in terms of auto attendance and voicemail and call group pickup and caller ID and all this stuff, right? So really incredible features. I will say, and I've said this in the past, because this is a cloud environment, we're adding new features all the time. So if we don't have a feature today, ask us and check our roadmap. Chances are we're working on it if it's a common request across our customer base, but there's new features being rolled out, so the feature velocity is extremely fast. Okay, so back to PSTN and Telco. I know we talked about it under the operator section, but still, these are some of the things that you need to be aware of under PSTN Telco. Number one, in terms of regulations, if you have phones or call centers in India and to some extent in China, then you need to double check the rules and regulations there. And I think one company that I worked with that is excellent in terms of their knowledge for PSTN and Teams Phone in India is Tata, right? So make sure you talk to a company that has expertise like them. The other thing is number porting, right? So Are you porting over numbers to a Microsoft calling plan, to Operator Connect or direct routing? So look into those details because sometimes that takes time. And then PBX integration, right? Are you connecting your old PBX to Teams phone? That's certainly a possibility using direct routing. And then also E911. So another aspect is devices. And under devices, when I think about them, first I want to understand who are the people that I'm providing devices to. And so I would engage in some exercise of persona mapping, right? Are these knowledge workers? Are these executives? Are these just common area phones? There are a lot of different classes of users, right? Frontline workers, front desk people, so retail, people that are mobile. But understand what your workforce is because it might have changed since your last phone system, and then give them the correct type of device. Even if it's just soft phone, understand what the requirements are. Also critical is analog, right? It's not surprising actually that there are still a lot of analog devices out there. So understand how analog fits into a Microsoft Teams phone solution because it actually does. We have solutions for it. And those operators a lot of times have really unique and compelling solutions as well. And then understand from a fax perspective, whether you have fax machines or you're doing faxing, how can you continue to engage in using that older technology with Microsoft Teams Phone? And now we're going back to third-party applications. We've already kind of talked about contact center, but also there's attendant console, right? Your older PBX might have an attendant console built in. With Microsoft, you might need to engage one of our ISVs for an attendant console solution. How about advanced reporting? There's already really great reporting built into Teams, but if you need something additional to pull in from our other data sets, then there are companies out there that provide advanced reporting. And then on the billing side, I kind of mentioned it before, but if you have a lot of different departments internationally and you want to break out the costs for them, there are some applications and companies out there that provide billing services for Teams Phone. Now, another really important aspect is infrastructure because the software is riding on some hardware, some networking platform, and it's critical for you to do some network planning. Understand the amount of bandwidth that's being put out by these Teams phone calls or video calls, and if your network is set up to prioritize from a quality of service perspective. So all of that needs to be ironed out. There are really good network planning tools built into Teams, so make sure you leverage those. And then on the security side, I've actually done a video talking about security using Intune and mobile device management and different technologies that we have. But you want to make sure the right people have access and the wrong people don't have access. There are a lot of spam detection tools that are out there. There's some built into Microsoft Callings plan, but from a direct routing side, Audio Codes has some, Oracle has some. So look at things that can alleviate the number of people calling in that shouldn't be, right? Spam calls. And then on the redundancy side, there is a survivable branch appliance technology that Microsoft has that if your location can't reach the cloud, then you can have some local redundancy and still be able to make calls in that network outage situation. And this is my last slide on Teams Phone project considerations, and it's a critical one, day two support, right? Because you've done a great job of rolling out Teams Phone at this point, but don't forget about end user training and even admin training because maybe people don't really know how to use all these really great features that this wonderful new technology has. So this ties into user adoption. There are really good analytics and reports that talk about user adoption, and so you can gauge that and understand if you need to do more training, less training, are you good, do you need to keep scaling? So those are all considerations from a day two perspective. And again, things that Microsoft can help you with, our partners can help you with, or even your IT team can handle this. All right, so you've made it this far. Hopefully everything so far on Teams Phone makes sense. And really, as I mentioned in the beginning, it'll apply to Microsoft Teams Room. So the good news is because pretty much everything we talked about under Teams Phone also applies to Microsoft Teams Rooms, I'll say that you can almost just replace that Teams Phone section with an MTR section because you're going to still need some type of a number, a phone number for your MTR so that you can make and receive calls from it. Even if you just wanted to use it as a conference room device, you could. You need hardware, right, from the OEM manufacturers. And then on the right-hand side, whether you're bringing in a system integrator or an operator on the phone side or the OEM, the device manufacturers, all of these are critical components of your MTR project. So then what's left? So let's look at some MTR specific considerations. Now, number one, when I think about a Microsoft Teams room, I want to make sure that I'm looking at the room environmentals, like the size of the room. Is it a small room? Is it a large executive briefing center? How is the room being used? Are you using a whiteboard? Are you just doing a formal presentation? Do you need a camera in the back and the front? And then the acoustics of the room, the lighting, these things, sometimes they need to be fixed a little bit. Now the technology has come a long way in, taking out the background noise and improving lighting, but still, you might need to do some remediations depending on the type of room that you're working with. Now, on the MTR side, are you standardizing on an MTR on Windows or Android? So this matters sometimes from a feature set perspective, from a maintenance perspective, from a security perspective. So there's pros and cons to each of these decisions. And then interop. Is your Microsoft Teams room, does it need to be able to guest join into a WebEx or a Zoom meeting? Or maybe you're using a Cisco video endpoint and you need to join into a Teams meeting. And there's a really cool announcement just recently on Cisco running MTR software, which is fantastic, right? So think about interop as well. And then lastly, from a maintenance perspective, I'm not talking about your maintenance contract where if an MTR breaks, you contact the manufacturer. I'm thinking more because these are conference rooms and they're public spaces, they're being used by internal and external members of your company and outside. Sometimes there's a little bit more wear and tear. Maybe a cable is unplugged or maybe something goes missing. So you want to have some kind of a maintenance plan in terms of replacing equipment or someone that can go in and fix things, right? So these are some considerations as well. And that's a wrap. Check out my playlist over here for more information on Teams Phone and Microsoft Teams Room. Subscribe below. And if I missed anything, drop me a comment and let me know. Thank you very much for watching, and I'll catch you on the next one.